So last week I went to my first gamescom and it was incredible. I've been to conventions before, most notably at the Star Wars Celebration last year, but this is the first gaming convention that I've ever gone to and I was blown away. It is massive, but it was just really nice to be there in a time where there's just so much discourse and controversy. What feels like every game that releases now, just to be in a place where everyone is excited, just play some video games and talk about some video games. So with that said, I got hands on a lot of video games whilst I was at Gamescom on the show floor. And I want to talk about a good couple of those today. Now, there's a few things that I only got to see presentations for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of split this into two parts. I'm going to do everything that I played and then everything that I saw, which is mainly Xbox stuff. So I'm going to talk about Xbox at Gamescom because they had the biggest presence of all and honestly had a lot of good stuff to show. So we're just going to talk about the best stuff that I played and some of the stuff that was just, okay. First of all, Space Marine 2. Holy shit. This game is shaping up to be incredible. It really, really is. I think out of everything that I played at Gamescom, Space Marine 2 was my game of the show. The tech that is on display here and what they're doing with the Terminids and the enemies on screen is incredible. In most games, you'll look into the distance and you'll see a lot of enemies out there. And you'll think, cool, nice set dressing really makes it. All of a sudden, in Space Marine 2, all the enemies go from what was set dressing and they just start making their way towards you until they are visible, tangible enemies for you to fight on screen. And the combat just, it delivers. It's got the parry, it's got the melee, and that it really makes you think. Like, you have to strategize. You can't just go and shoot, because you will run out of ammo eventually. So it's like, all right, these enemies I'm going to melee, this enemy I'm going to parry. And then when you get that finisher, you stun him, you do enough damage to them, and you just rip them up. And it's incredible. For me, this is probably the game I'm looking forward to most now for the rest of the year. I'm not a Warhammer guy. The first Warhammer thing or any entity that I played was the first Space Marine. And to see this 13 years later, it looks to be incredible. Like, if this was not on your radar, I really think it should be. I waited in line for about 2.5 hours, played for 15 minutes, and I came away and I was like, wow, like, I'm an impatient boy. And it still felt like that line was worthwhile to me. It looks incredible. But, well, less than 2 weeks away from launch now. So, yeah, this game is going to be incredible. And if it hasn't been on your radar, it really should be. The other best thing I played was Phantom Blade Zero. So, if you're not familiar with this, it is a little bit of a Souls-like, but I think it was first revealed at a PlayStation State of Play, maybe? And it kind of looked like a game that wasn't real, in the fact that the combat just looked too fluid. It was like, how does this play? It doesn't really make sense. But after getting hands-on, I'm blown away. So there's been a lot of messaging that this game probably won't be released until the end of 2026, because what they've done is they focused on building the overall sandbox and the combat first, and then they're going to think about adding stories and bosses and chapters later on, which is a good approach if you ask me. I think getting that core gameplay right, particularly for these kind of games, is really, really important. But like, I was in my bag. I was feeling it. Like, I went through the whole demo, 0 deaths, and I know people that really struggled on it. And if I was to explain it in one kind of way, it's definitely the fast, frantic pace of Sekiro, but it's a lot more combo based and driven. Like, there is inputs that you can match, which is like square, square, triangle, or XXB, or whatever it might be, to pull off. And like, that has different combos, and the enemies are quite reactive in that, like, you can stun them before they attack you, in the same way that they can attack you and stun you before your combo is up. I played a tutorial level, and then I think it was 3 bosses and a couple of enemies on the way to those bosses. And like, it has that cinematic kind of Sekiro feel, but the fluidity of the combat, the way you can like traverse up walls and then bounce back down, and the got that nice little parry system. But it's those combos, and it just looks, the presentation of it like really blew me away, that when you're watching it, it doesn't really make sense of how it plays, but when you're playing it and you got your hands on the sticks, it feels incredible. Like, it really, really does. So for me, Space Marine 2 and Phantom Blade Zero were easily the 2 best things that I played at Gamescom. The first thing that I queued up for at Gamescom was Outlaws. I'm not going to talk too much about Outlaws because it is literally out tomorrow when this video goes live, and I'm going to be covering that on the channel itself. What I played, I enjoyed. I investigated this High Republic cruiser, explored, and just ultimately had a pretty good time. Like, it was a 20-minute demo, Had fun with it. I don't want to talk too much about it because, again, I'm going to be playing it on the channel this week and then doing, hopefully, a full review on it later on. Switching away from like the AAA side of things, they had the Indie Arena booth. So I got to play a couple of indie games. The one that spoke to me the most was a game called Warden's Will. So if you play on PC, you can download the demo for this on Steam right now. And the best way to put it is Risk of Rain meets Returnal. And they're doing some really interesting stuff with it. So what they're doing is like you'll pick a character and they'll all have different abilities, and then they have like different sets of guns. So you'll have like a primary way of shooting somebody. And as you do that, you will build up heat in the gun. As you then get to a certain, so say you get to 50% heat, you can then use your secondary attack, which will then reduce the heat, but it will still damage the enemies. So it's a really kind of fun spin on the whole reloading and heat consumption with enemies. So what they were saying is like you will go through the levels, and it is a roguelike, so like when you die you get reset, but like for me I had to go and find 3 antennas, and just the overall abilities of it, like it will have 3-player co-op, and it was really just good fun. I really enjoyed myself in this demo. The art style was gorgeous, and like I just had a good time talking to the developer that played it. And I think it's definitely one that's worth shouting out, particularly if you do like Returnal. It's not quite as bullet hell as Returnal is in terms of so many projectiles running at you, but it was a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend keeping an eye on this one for when it does release eventually. So speaking of surprises, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in my Xbox video, but towerborne. So this is releasing on early access for Steam first before it actually goes to Game Pass. And again, it's a cooperative game, but it's kind of stylized like a beat 'em up, but it's like medieval, and it seems like there's loot, and I don't know. I only played one mission. We got to the end, we fought a boss, and it was really cool. Again, I'm going to speak more about this in my Xbox video, but in terms of hands-on, like in terms of the biggest surprise for me at the show floor that I played, towerborne was it. Like it wasn't really on my radar. I'd heard about it, but actually getting my hands on the sticks, this was one of the games that I was like, oh, like they have something here, and I can really see myself getting into this one. You can see where the replayability is, and just got a really charming art style that I really vibed with. So I'll talk more about that in the Xbox video, but I wanted to give it a shout on here because if I was to say the one surprise from Gamescom, it would definitely be towerborne. The only game that didn't really vibe with me was Unknown 9 Awakening. So this is the game that has the main actor from the Witcher series of who plays Yennefer as the protagonist. And I don't know if it was a case of being dropped straight into the demo and just seeing a very quick flashy tutorial on screen and then you've got a load of enemies to fight. It just didn't feel quite right with the combat. What the premise of this game is that you have these kind of abilities, and what you can do is you can channel yourself into somebody. So for example, let's say a guard is running towards me with a gun. I can like fly into their spirit and then use them. Maybe I run up to one of the other enemies, I shoot them with that thing, and then I transfer into them, and then I run into a barrel and smash the barrel so that I damage myself kind of thing. So you can go into the enemies, take control of the enemies, and then manipulate the battlefield around you to kind of take advantage of environmental attacks. That part was really cool. The main combat of it though, like when the enemies are at you and you're using like your force field to block, or like you're trying to, not really parry, but like you're using your more magical abilities, it just didn't feel quite right. It felt a bit stiff, and like there wasn't much maneuverability in terms of how I could have approached the situations. Again, you always have to give these previews and these little slices of gameplay the benefit of the doubt, because I'm being thrown into it. This could be a third of the way through the game, could be 2/3 of the way through the game, and it was a difficult scenario in that aspect. Like, it's still something that I'm going to keep my eye on, but if there was one game that I kind of came out of Gamescom just like, that was okay, I guess, it probably was Unknown 9 Awakening. And the premise seemed alright, so I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this one, but as for like initial first gameplay, I wasn't too keen on Unknown 9. But if there was a game that I was already loving, Marvel Rivals. At Gamescom, they had Bucky and Captain America as playable characters. And Captain America, he's going to need a nerf, I think. He was a powerful boy. Marvel Rivals continues to really blow me away. It's been interesting because if I was to play Marvel Rivals, Concord, Overwatch, Overwatch and Concord to me play better than Marvel Rivals does. But the presentation of Marvel Rivals and like that Marvel juice, that Marvel sauce behind it is the appeal. And again, Captain America, like there was a line, and I don't know what it is, but these Marvel Rivals characters, like Obviously, you're not looking for the most amazingly written Marvel game here, but the writing is like funny in like the early 2000s Marvel way, where there's a line and he was like, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings," and I was like, "Huh, that's Captain America," you know. So that was a weird one, and I think in the trailer, like he does the whole like, "I can do this all day" in like the whole Avengers Endgame, whatever. The fact is, it plays well. Cap was fun. Bucky was fun. We got a release date for December 6th, I believe. So I'm really excited to check this one out at the full release. And again, it was just nice to dive in, play as Captain America, play as Bucky, and again, just another two really well made characters with good character kits. And everyone there was having a good time playing Marvel Rivals too. So yeah, happy to get my hands on that one again and can't wait for the full release of it. Now, maybe you're like me. In 2005, a very, very special game released. And when I say special, I don't mean one of the best. I mean one of the most dumb, chaotic games, Shadow the Hedgehog. It was my introduction to Shadow as a character, and they gave him a gun. Give him a gun back, for God's sake, Sega. At Gamescom, there was the Sonic X Shadow Generations playable, so I got to play 2 levels as the Sonic Generations, as Sonic, and then 2 levels as Shadow. Had a lot of fun. The Shadow stuff particularly, like, it is that edgy kind of Shadow that, you know, it's like he's on the precipice of saying fuck. You know, he really is. They didn't give him a gun or anything like that, but between the soundtrack that was playable, the levels, like you can slow down time, chaotic nature of what Shadows is, like he had the ability where like you slow down time as you approach like an object and then you run. So let's say it's spinning really fast. Some of it is like will hurt you and some of it's like safe to run across. That was present at the playable booth, and he plays very different to Sonic. I never played Sonic Generations, but I do hear it's like probably the best Sonic game out there other than Sonic Mania. And I had a good time playing this. Like the Sonic levels were really fun, and I do intend to pick this up. It is a busy end of October. You've got Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and you've got Dragon Age releasing at the end of October. But I think this is going to be a really fun pick up and play. What they showed off of the Shadow levels, like it shows that they're going for something fantastical in what the story's trying to tell. And like, I believe the developers have said that this is going to cross over with Sonic Generations at points, but it was good to be back as Shadow. And like the synergy with that movie coming out later in this year, I think it's going to be a really good time. It's a demo that I was playing. I just found myself smiling playing it. Like, I don't often audibly react to video games when I'm playing, but I do have fond memories of Shadow the Hedgehog and then playing as Shadow in Sonic Heroes. And I think Sonic X Shadow Generations is going to be a good time. But on a visual front, it looked good, it ran really well. So I'm excited to see more of this as we get closer to release and to eventually actually play the full thing on October 25th, I think it is. And then to round the whole video out, I wanted to talk about 2 games because they're kind of in parallel of each other. It was the Diablo Vessel of Hatred DLC and Path of Exile 2. Now, I've not played Path of Exile 1, but I have been back into Diablo 4 recently. Like I just did a video on it 1 year later, and I feel in a much better place with Diablo 4 now. So we'll start with that, and again, I'll talk more about that on my Xbox video. But the new class, Spiritborn, it's a bloody good time, man. Like the power fantasy, they really nailed that in Diablo now. The new area, I think that's where I was anyway, was gorgeous. Like it's that kind of gritty, swampy, and misty kind of environment, but it looks great. Like you like to look at it. It's not one of those ones where it's like you can't really see what's going on. Like it looks amazing. And then playing as the Spiritborn class, like channeling energy through you, calling summons down. Diablo has just really found its place now. It really has. This just made me more excited to play the DLC on October 8th. And the dungeon that I encountered just felt a lot more open-ended. I'm not sure if that's a distinct change that they're making going forward, but there seem to be a lot more paths to explore rather than just a very linear dungeon with maybe one public event or whatever. There seems to be a lot more going on in this one, and then I fought the boss, beat the boss. It was just a really good time, and again, alongside Blizzard's incredible production with how they do the cinematics, and I really enjoyed the main Diablo story, so to get more of that in the expansion, I'm pretty excited for that. I myself, I'm not too keen on the whole seasonal character thing. Like, I understand it, but I'm not really the one who wants to grind from 0 to 100 every time. But to come into the new expansion, play Spiritborn, get that from 0 to 100, and they had like a list of different Spiritborn characters, and they all seem to have a different play style. So again, it just goes to that whole build crafting. And with the recent changes with loot and how that's all been shaping up in seasons recently, I do think that Diablo 4 is in a great spot. Path of Exile, on the other hand, that is shaping up to be fantastic. Now, I'm not really the over the top ARPG guy, to be honest with you. I just want a Marvel or DC version of one of those, I can't lie. But Path of Exile, again, wasn't really on my radar. But I was reading recently that it has like 130 different bosses or something like that. And in that, they were asked, like, okay, and how many of those are kind of like reskins? And it's like none of them, like they're all unique bosses. And so I got to play about 45 minutes of this. So this is probably the longest demo that I played at Gamescom. And I just found myself really enjoying it. Again, it's got that kind of like dark, gritty nature of it, but it felt just as satisfying as Diablo does with its abilities. So I played like a range class with like a bow and arrow, and I just found myself chained together like really cool stuff. So there's this one ability where I got electric arrows, so like if I shot one that hit an enemy, that would then bounce to the enemies around it. But then that would synergize with the next upgrade that I got, which is the lightning rod. So what I would do is I'd fire up this lightning rod, it'd fall down, and if I shot the electric arrow, it hit an enemy, that would then hit the lightning rod and do extra damage, and extra sparks would fly out and damage the enemies. I just found myself like within 45 minutes building towards that particular playstyle. And like that was really good. So this one's launching in early access on November 15th, I believe. I'm not sure if it's one that I'm going to get in on day one, but I'm very excited to see kind of where this goes. The boss that I thought was really cool is like this worm and like sprouted out of the ground, and then it would have like tails. So like if you got too close to a tail, it'd smash down with the tail. But then it'd have like projectile attacks and it'd have enemies to deal with, and it just seemed to be really fulfilling. I found it a lot more challenging than Diablo was on its base difficulty. I think that's intended. Like it seems to be like the boss killed me the first time, and then I went back and I fucking destroyed it because I was like, that's what I do. But I do think like Path of Exile is shaping up to be a really good alternative to Diablo that may pinch away some Diablo players, but also may attract new people to the genre. So yeah, I thought it was quite interesting to compare the two. Like I wouldn't necessarily say one was better than the other, but I think they both have like unique, distinct. Like I do think Diablo is kind of the more approachable for the beginners, but for those looking for something maybe a little bit more gritty, and there was a lot to do. Bear in mind, like I got to play 45 minutes, and in that there was like 4 quests that were available to me. I think I did 2 of them. It was just a really good time, and like I finished the 45 minutes. I was like, you know what? Like I didn't expect to spend 45 minutes here. It was the end of my first day, and I did because I just really enjoy myself playing it. So yeah, that's everything I played at my first Gamescom. Like I say, it was just amazing to be at Gamescom. It really was. Like I want to go again next year, and it was just nice to just be on the show floor, see all the people just excited about games, all the cosplayers, and just people willing to queue up for hours upon hours just to play a 15 to 20-minute demo, when it just feels like we're just doing the most stupid discourse all the time now about video games, and that like an 8 out of 10 is a bad score, and just silly, silly things. That it was just nice to be in a place where everyone just wanted to celebrate games, play some games, and have fun. So yeah, it was really cool to be at my first Gamescom. And like I say, I got to see some presentations of some Xbox games: Starfield Shattered Space, Indiana Jones, Avowed. And I'm going to talk a bit more about Diablo 4 and Towerborne in the Xbox video. Too much to cram into this one, so look forward to that later on in the week. But like I say, that's my first Gamescom. So let me know, did anything that I speak about today appeal to you? Is there any games in there that you're looking forward to trying out and playing? Was there anything from opening night live that excited you? Borderlands 4 getting announced, a new Mafia game getting announced, that got me really excited. Anything from opening night live from Jeff's event that really spoke to you? Other than that, if you enjoyed hearing my thoughts about these games, then dropping a like would really be appreciated. It was, again, amazing to go to these kind of things and then just to report back and say, hey, I played these things, they were really great, or they weren't so great, or they were my game of the show. It was incredible. And again, it's just kind of what I do here. I just talk about the things that I love and I'm passionate about when it comes to video games. So if you enjoyed hearing my thoughts, then consider subscribing, because I'd love for you to stick around. Other than that, all my socials are linked in the description down below, so if you want to get at me anywhere, you can get at me down there. Other than that, I hope you have a terrific day, look after yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.